Think back to your Intro to Psych course. During that course, you should have had a unit that covered motivations, one of which was the motivation or drive to have sex. This drive has three main categories of influencers: psychological, cultural and societal, and biological and evolutionary. Since this is a psychology course, let's start with some psychological influences. These can include things like our moods, level of cognitive awareness, attitudes towards sex and relationships, others' expectations for our behavior, and associations learned through reinforcement. Some of these factors are transitory, meaning they change frequently, or they're stable and stay pretty consistent throughout our lives. For example, our personality is pretty stable over the course of our life. We'll see later in this course that those who are extroverted might engage in sexual behavior in a very different way than someone that is a bit more on the introverted side of the spectrum. On the other hand, our moods can change very quickly. If we're in a negative mood, we're probably going to be less interested in sex. If we do decide to have sex, despite this bad mood, it might not be very satisfying. So, these are just a few examples of psychological factors that can promote or prevent sexual behavior. However, it's important to note that all of these effects are bidirectional. So that means that while our personality or our mood may shape our sexual behavior also shapes our attitudes and personality. It probably comes as no surprise that culture and society plays a huge role in determining our sexual behavior. I think it's fascinating to think about the differences between what is considered a sexual norm and sexually deviant across various cultures. I have a quick story to demonstrate cultural differences, and it has to do with the picture on this screen. When I was 22, I decided to go on vacation to Germany. When I arrived there, our tour guide told us a bit about the culture and what we could expect. One thing that our tour guide mentioned was that we may be shocked by how open people in Europe are about sex. I didn't think much of this, but later got to experience this openness firsthand. I think we were on our way to Oktoberfest. Our tour guide had us take the train, but before we boarded, I needed to use the restroom. As I'm in the restroom, I noticed a dispenser not unlike the ones you typically see in a restroom. But as I looked more closely, I noticed that this dispenser had more than the typical tampons and pads in it. Needless to say, I had to take a picture and send it to my sister, letting her know that I found a souvenir for her. But this is just one example of how culture influences what we view as a norm and what is deviant. I think we would all be shocked, or at least have to do a double take, if we saw a dispenser like this at Walmart. So Table 1.1 of your book contains some more examples of various sexual practices across cultures. Religion also plays a large role in cultural variations of sexuality. Many early religions viewed sex in similar ways, meaning that they viewed sex as something that is sinful and should only be done within marriage. Many of these notions also promoted gender roles characterized such that men were viewed as dominant and women were viewed as submissive. The extremeness of these views varied. For example, in Islam, sex within marriage is seen as a religious deed and is viewed positively. However, some Christian scholars felt that remaining single and celibate was a higher state than engaging in marital sex. Science also plays a role, although since this is a class based on science, we'll cover the role science plays a bit more extensively over the course of the semester. Media is such an ingrained part of our daily lives, we can't ignore the role it plays in our drive to have sex. Media has gradually come to include more sexual content. For example, back in the days when TV shows such as I Love Lucy were debuting, it was scandalous to show a married couple sharing a bed. But now, it would seem strange to see this set up in a TV show. Today, we have shows that feature full frontal nudity and graphic sex scenes. Theories, such as social learning theory, argue that these depictions have contributed to some big changes in sexual attitudes and behaviors over the past few decades. Our phones are also a vessel for sexual information. With a few keystrokes, We can access pornography, sexual information, and even sexual partners. All behaviors have some sort of biological cause since they're preceded by a pattern of activity within our brain. But when we talk about biological influences in this class, we'll mostly be talking about how genes or hormone levels influence how our brains develop or function. Genes play a big role in sexuality. For example, homosexuality has been driven at least in part by a variety of hereditary factors. Gender roles have also been shown to be influenced by sex hormones that people are exposed to within the womb. From an evolutionary perspective, human sexual activities are not unique across the animal kingdom. Many species have been documented as engaging in same-sex sexual activity, oral sex, and masturbation. So, as you can see, human sexuality is a complex phenomenon with many contributing factors.